The ribeye steak is considered to be one of the best steaks. It is even preferred by most chefs, and if they put it on the menu, they can price it at a top dollar, getting their best profit margins for their restaurants, while at the same time getting lots of happy customers.
Big thanks to Napoleon Grills for sponsoring this episode.
But what if I told you that after cooking ribeyes for years and years, I'm kind of switching to other steaks because of a good reason. This ribeye I bought at a price of 45 euros the kilogram at a restaurant wholesaler. That is a lot of money for a piece of beef, especially if you consider that if it goes to a restaurant, the margin on this piece of steak has to be at least double this price to make any money on this steak. I'm gonna cook this steak for you so that we together can compare it to a really good alternative. Something with a much more attractive price range. Of course, I'm gonna cook this steak the best way I know how, using the reverse sear method. I'm gonna season this steak with a little bit of smoked sea salt. Since this is such a thick piece of meat, I'm gonna put lots of it on each side. And I'm going to take a wireless thermometer and stick it in so I can keep track of the temperature inside the steak. I'm going to put the chef's temp thermometer in. I'm going to connect it to my app, set up a temperature, beef. Of course, I'm going to do a steak ribeye, and I'm going to be cooking it to a core temperature of 52 degrees Celsius. For my grill, I will be using the Napoleon Prestige 500 Phantom. Today I'm starting off by taking this steak and putting it on one side of the warming rack and then firing up the burners on the opposite position. I've now created a direct and indirect zone. All I need to do is close the lid, keep the barbecue at a temperature of about 140 degrees Celsius and wait until the steak hits its desired core temperature. And while we wait, let's take a look at the alternative steak. This is it. This is the steak that I want to show you guys that could be a very good substitute for your ribeye steak. Let me start with the best thing ever of this steak. You see, that's the price. It's going to be easy. I paid 19 euros the kilogram for this steak, which is half the price of the ribeye steak. Of course, these prices vary wherever you live in the world, but I'm pretty sure that in most places this steak is going to be cheaper than a ribeye steak. And you might know this steak as the butcher steak or the hanger steak. And it's called butcher steak for a good reason. Because after a day of butchering a cow, the butcher would take home this steak for his family. If I put the steak on the side, you see a seam in the middle right there. And if you cook it like it is right now, it's going to shrink up and it's going to toughen up, making this steak not as enjoyable as it could be on your dinner table. But if I tell you that if you take a knife and you run your knife along the tendon, cutting it out as you go, and it doesn't have to be perfect, you can even cut it through the middle if you want to, just like that, you're going to have a little bit of tendon on each side of that steak, and then you can easily remove that. So you're just going to go in with your knife and cut it off. It's going to give you a clean edge, just like that, and a perfect steak to work with. I'm going to do the same for the other side, just like that. Cut off that little bit of silver skin right there. And now you have two perfect cuts of steak ready to hit the grill. Of course, I do want to season it with a little bit of salt. Now I'm going to leave it at the tabletop to soak up a little bit of that salt and wait until our ribeye steak is done. And while we wait for our steaks, I'm going to show you how to make an easy and very delicious chili mayonnaise. So I'm going to take some mayonnaise to start with, about a cup. To that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of white wine vinegar, a tablespoon of sugar, a tablespoon of PitmasterX beef seasoning, or you can replace it with some of your favorite barbecue seasoning, 2 teaspoons of sriracha hot sauce, and cut up a mild green chili pepper. You want to get rid of the seeds, not because of the heat, but because of the way that it feels in your mouth. It's not nice to have seeds stuck in between your teeth. I'm going to use half. There we go. And I'm going to save half of it as a topping on top of the sauce. And I'd like to add a little bit more chili powder just to get that bite in. A couple of chili flakes for structure. Mix that up. And then we're going to serve it. This sauce is best kept overnight. That makes it taste better than it already is. But I'm going to serve it up right now with a steak. Serve it up with a couple of slices of green quartered chili pepper and just a few chili flakes. Look at that. Isn't that spectacular? Of course, I'm going to perform a quick taste test to make sure that I got the flavor profile right. It's just a little bit spicy and it comes in the end a little bit more. That is actually really, really good. I'm just going to keep eating this. I just got the notification that the steak is up to temperature, so we're gonna take it off and let it rest on the board, just like that. And now I am going to transform this gas grill into a charcoal barbecue. First I'm gonna remove the grill grates. Then I'm gonna place in the Napoleon charcoal tray and load it up with charcoal. I'm gonna turn on the burners underneath the charcoal. Once the charcoal's hot, it's time to start grilling. I'm gonna start by putting a crust on our ribeye steak. And what the charcoal is going to do in addition to the gas is going to give me intense heat and a little bit of extra charcoal flavor. When you got a nice crust, it's time to take the steak off the grill. And there's no longer a need to rest this steak because I already rested it, and putting on a little bit of a crust is not going to create a necessity to rest it again. All right, let's get the little twine off and cut this steak. That is a beautiful steak. Nice medium rare, absolutely delicious. But I'm going to show you now what is going to be left of this steak. Because you got all these parts of the ribeye that you actually cannot eat. Of course you can put them in your mouth and try to digest them, but it's not going to be part of your dinner. Because you have to cut off all the tendons, you have to cut off the fat, and then what you have left is going to be, there's a little bit of meat still here. You can't eat that, you can't eat that. You can't eat this, you can't eat that. There's some fat right here that we're going to take off. So this is all of the ribeye that I can actually eat, but this is all of the ribeye that is actually fat and tendons. Now of course there's a little bit of meat left on it, but most of it is just waste. And that's what you see happening a lot. When people eat ribeye, there's always these little things left on their plate. And even though the ribeye has a great name by reputation, in reality you're cooking a lot of waste with your steak. But if you're paying premium price for that waste, it's kind of a shame. Still tastes good though. Time to start grilling the butcher steak. Let's put it on. Because of the shape, you don't actually have to do the reverse sear. It's really thin. It has a lot of intramuscular fat, but it's going to render down, it's going to cook easily, give us a beautiful crust, and it's going to cook the steak through. Just check with my probe thermometer, make sure that I got the right temperatures inside the steak, and we're about 47 degrees Celsius. And I want these steaks to come up to a temperature of about 52 to 54 degrees Celsius. So I got to take them off now and let them rest. And during the resting period, they're still going to go up in temperature. And that's why you got to take them off before they hit the desired core temperature. I'm going to give them a little bit more seasoning because I like lots of salt on my steak. But you can do whatever you want. We got fibers running here in this direction. And that means to get the steak as tender as you can, you want to cut it against the grain, against the fibers that you're seeing right there. So as they are running in this direction, I'm going to cut the steak against those fibers like that. That is a beautiful piece of steak. And if you pull it, you can see that it's tender. You can just shred it apart, and that's going to tell you that it's very tender. You got to put this on your list because in my mind, it's well worth with a steak that is only half the price. Plate this up, put this plate on the grill. Nice stone plate. It's going to keep your steak nice and warm on the table. Definitely recommend that. Have it. Of course, I'm going to put a little bit of that chili mayonnaise on. A few drops here and there, just like that. That's how we're going to serve it. Before I go, I just want to ask you guys one question. What is the steak that you would replace the ribeye steak with? Let me know down below in the comments. Of course, you can take a little bit more if you want to, just like that. And I hope you guys enjoyed this one. I sure did, so hope to see you guys in the next video. Until then, eet smakelijk and keep on grilling.